All right. Well, good enough. I'll try not to walk in front of the screen too much. As you can tell, there might be a glare that might blind a few of you all, so I'll try to avoid that as much as possible. I usually have a bad habit to want to get front and center, and that causes the problems, right? By show of hands, how many of you all heard of Jabil or Jabil Circuit? All right, not bad. Typically, it's a lot less. I'll go a little bit into the company in just a moment, but I will share a little bit of a story that kind of gets us started into this whole discussion. Approximately 3 years ago, you take a look at our company culture. It's been around for a very long time, and I'll tell you exactly how long it is in just a moment. But we really thrive on the whole experience of work hard, play hard type of an experience. I'm sure a lot of you say that, and your all's teams are doing that as well. I think Jabil walks the talk a lot. We do have a very dynamic environment. We do something that's been traditional for as many years as the organization has existed. We do Beer 30 on Fridays. So every Thursday, here comes the beer and here comes the wine and out goes the people. And we sit down and we talk about our work week. We talk about what we have achieved. We talk about our challenges. And we collaborate and figure out where other resources can come in and help us out with certain things. And yes, it's very social, but it's also very effective. And that's just to name a few examples. We do annual pig roasts, golf outings, poker tournaments, just to name a few. And we're very involved in our community as well, which is located, our headquarters is located in St. Petersburg, Florida. But although we feel as though we had a very strong culture, you also want to assess the employee satisfaction. You want to assess the engagement of your employees. And so we partnered with IBM and we did this extensive employee survey. And it only includes 36 questions. Some of the questions are weighted, obviously, like, hey, would you invite one of your family members or friends to actually work for this organization? Some of those questions can be pretty thought-provoking and profound by seeing the responses. Our leadership saw the responses after all the data was compiled by IBM, and I think our leadership was a little bit set back in their seats. I think they were a little bit surprised. They were shocked by the results. And the one element that came out loud and clear was the employees felt like their lack of engagement was more or less, they didn't know what their job responsibilities, how did it impact the success of the organization? How did we participate in the strategies and direction that the company is going? Because the company continues to change and evolve and grow, but the employees didn't see where their work contributed to that success. So there was a lack of understanding of our strategic focus, and kind of getting into the components that we talked about earlier in the last session was strategic alignment. So hopefully this is you'll get some insight as far as how we've tackled that as an operational excellence organization and how we developed a lot more understanding and engaged our employees in leadership in this fashion. I'm going to start off with a question. I want this to be as interactive as possible. What do you think the goal is for any company or objective for any company? I want some input.
Make money, profit.
Make money, make profit. Same.
Customer satisfaction.
Okay, customer satisfaction.
Contribute to the well-being of the world.
All right, contribute to the well-being of the world. I love these responses. You know, and I use this slide, or I use at least this question many times, either if I'm talking at presentations or working with my staff or working with whoever it might be. And it is very common. I hear the responses to make money, to make profit. It's very typical to hear that response. What I like to get you thinking about is the main goal or objective for any company is to survive in a hostile environment. I mean, think about it. Do you think Blockbuster thought that a vending machine can take them down? Or perhaps, you know, this whole thing with Netflix and Amazon, you know, streaming these videos. And what's next? You know, we're going to be able to plug into our phones and put virtual reality headsets on and be part of the movie. So everything is changing at such a rapid pace these days. So it is hostile out there. And the main objective for any company is to survive. You can make money, you can make profits, but at what cost? Did you cut corners? Did you distort the figures and information? They call the Enron model, I don't know. So there's things out there that people can do, but are you taking the right steps to survive? Well, for those of you who don't know who Jabil is, we actually celebrated survival of 50 years. Quite a milestone from our perspective. It was founded in 1966 in Michigan. Today we are the third largest electronic services provider in the world. We make revenue up to almost $20 billion. I think we'll hit the 20 billion mark this year. We have 37,000 square feet of manufacturing space. And we have approximately, right now, I think the number is 102 manufacturing sites in 5 continents. And we don't know the exact number of employees. We're working on that data management, but we know we're well over 180,000 employees. And the reason why is we're going through significant acquisitions almost every certain period of time. So the question is now, can we survive another 50 years? Can we? Statistics are showing us that it's going to be quite a bit of a challenge. Considering back, if we look over the last, since 1955, these Fortune 500 companies, almost 90% of them are no longer with us. Maytag, Zenith, American Motors are no longer part of this equation. The companies that have survived, companies you may be aware of, Campbell Soup and General Motors. But I know here at Jabil, we want to survive. We want to last another 50 years. So take all this in. All right. So while you're taking all that in, evolution, change, the dynamics of organizations today it's a constant. It's a reality. It's happening in every one of your organizations. And at the end of the day, you need to be able to have a workforce that is as agile, understanding that change is going to exist, be able to embrace change, and more importantly, you need change leaders in your organization. You need people to understand how to change. I think this is where an organizational or operational excellence organizations can come in and help bridge a lot of these gaps in developing the workforce and also coaching and mentoring with our business partners and leaders on how to successfully create this culture. Now, this illustration was a number of us leaders of the Lean Six Sigma organization got together and said, when we're developing new businesses or we're transforming our existing value streams, how do we do it? How do we do it today? How do we want to do it tomorrow? And we mapped it out in your traditional Post-it notes and paper and stepped back and said, yeah, that's the way it should be done. And then, of course, we have an artist amongst us, and he came up with this illustration. So I know it's pretty hard to sink this all in, so I want to make it a little more simple, okay? And this is, again, more interactive between, the group here and myself. By a show of hands, how many of your organization use tools like process map, flow charts, Ishikawa diagrams? There you go. There's the hands. All right, next question. How many of your organizations are bundling those up and calling it a Lean Six Sigma organizational effectiveness? Not too many? Hands? Oh, there you are. All right, so you have bundled it up. You're calling it something. It's a system of continuous improvement that you're deploying in your organizations. Okay, again, third question. How many of you are measuring the results of that team, being number of certifications, number of projects, number of dollars saved? Come on, let's see the hands. Come on, don't hold on me. I know it's 2:30. Okay, good. There we go. All right, less hands on that one. Here's the question I have for you all, because I think this is the missing piece of the puzzles of a lot of strong organizations today. How many of you follow, teach, educate, and drive your organizational effectiveness or operational excellence through guiding principles? All right. Some good hands. All right. It's great to see that. We've partnered with the Shingo Institute, and they have really shed some light on our organization, letting us know the importance of following these principles and how it really, at the end of the day, drives the culture of continuous improvement. A lot of organizations didn't follow these principles in the past. I worked for one of them. For any of you that knows Selectron Technologies, another contract manufacturer, we were the fastest growing stock in the 1990s. Early 2000s, it collapsed just as fast as it grew. But yet, we were a two-time, in fact, we were the first manufacturing company to be a two-time Malcolm Baldrige National Award winner. Wow, we were at the top of the game. Stock was growing, but we're not around, that company's not around today. So why is that? And again, a lot of others have asked those similar questions of Shingo Prize winners or any of these other awards that exist out there, or some of these companies that won awards in this competition here, right? How do you sustain the gains? How do you make sure that when your leader or leaders leave an organization, that the culture exists, that is embedded, and that there's always going to be this thrive for continuous improvement in the ways that you're embracing it and deploying it? So it really comes down to these principles. And you must understand that there are a few principles out there, and you want your organization to understand and live by and practice these principles while you're driving your continuous improvement methodologies. Why? Because you want to gain their commitment behind this as well. Commitment is everything, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the necessity of commitment. If it's an organization that's just using tools and calling it something like Lean Six Sigma, but not following the principles, there's a high probability of failure. So I just want to, I'll give an example of this. I've worked for organizations before where their operational excellence team is seen as very tactical. Hey, there's problems, go fix it. Hey, I want you to be these glorified trainers and teach people these really neat certifications. And I would have people come to my office and say, I'm working on this certification project. I've done these tools. Check the box, check the box, check the box. We've seen presentations about that this week as well. Check the box of the tools that are being used. And I'll ask the questions. What did you learn from that? What questions were you trying to answer? What questions were newly created after using those tools? And sadly, usually those individuals seeking the certifications are not very good at responding to those types of questions. So I don't want to embrace the approach and deployment in that way. I want us to be able to make it so that people do understand why they're doing what they're doing. Why are they changing? Why are these tools necessary? So real quickly, I know that I'm under a time constraint here. I'm not going to go into all 6 of these in great details, but we do have the component of strategic alignment, obviously making sure that we've created this constancy of purpose and folks are out there aligned towards the strategies, goals, and objectives. The cultural enablers. How are we promoting teamwork and developing our employees and driving their level of engagement? The continuous improvement aspects. Establishing a systematic, scientific problem-solving approach and driving towards a relentless elimination of waste. How about built-in quality, never passing on the defects into the next process and making these problems more visible and making a culture that can embrace that and feel comfortable and safe in that environment. Or velocity, making sure we have no uninterrupted flow with our products and services that we're delivering. How do we make sure that there's not a lot of bureaucracies, checks and balances, inspections, approvals, and more meetings to figure out how to get to the destination? And at the end of the day, are we delivering to the results? And those results should be aligned towards creating value for those customers. But for the topic of this presentation, the topic really hits on this first one. It's also the most critical and first one you should be working towards, is that strategic alignment piece. Now, in the prior slide, you saw that you said, well, okay, I had this thing called constancy of purpose. We're kind of changing it, the thought of this a little bit more. That was a Deming statement made many decades ago. Today, we're trying to look at it more as a unification of purpose. So how are we looking at all of the stakeholders and functions and teams, and we're coming together and unified towards looking at a common goal or direction? Now, yes, I mentioned that Jabil is a manufacturing company, but my prior responsibility before doing this business development stuff was I was in charge of all the office and corporate functions and improvements. So I was working in HR and IT and supply chain and those teams in our corporate environment. I was the transactional change dude, right? And by way of example here, unify of purpose. Why do these groups exist? Is the one question you can ask your departments, you can ask your company. Why do you exist? What's your purpose? And I can sit here with the CIO of the organization and I asked them that question, and I brought his leadership team and asked them that question. And the response is, well, hey, we deliver technical solutions that keeps us up and operating, and we also enhance our capabilities moving forward so we can become more efficient. Said, okay, well, what happens if you fail? What happens if things don't happen the way you want it to? Well, then we're going to lose a lot of revenue because our operations are very dependent on our structures and systems. Okay, so what are we going to aim to do this year? Well, he created a battle cry. He created this purpose for his organization. He says, we're going to have flawless execution of system support. Pretty cool. All right, flawless execution of system support. That's great. Now how are we going to measure that? Well, we have a metric. We have these 4 levels of severity, P1s through P4s. P1's most severe, means we have process shutdown, and we are going to impact shipments. All right, good enough. Let's look at P1s. Now, how many other organizations will sit there and say, we're just demanding improvements in these metrics, right? Now we're starting to help the organization understand what the metrics are doing and why we're doing it. And we then engage the teams that talk a little bit more about, all right, how are we going to demonstrate and show the progression, and how are we going to institute some visual management so everyone in the organization, in your organization, can see if we are progressing, if we are winning the game. Sports, I love sports, you know? And we go to these games, and you know what's going on in the game. As a fan, you can look up at the scoreboard. First, you know who's winning. You know how much time is left. You know what the situation is on the field. It's quite, you deliver a lot of knowledge from this, you know, from the scoreboards and so forth. Well, how come our companies don't have this? And can they, or do they? And the element behind this is from a coaching and leadership perspective. Think about it this way. A lot of you are very, knowledgeable in the world of continuous improvement, and we follow this thing called Plan, Do, Check, Act, right? The Shewhart cycle or Deming cycle. And the one thing I do encourage every one of you is figure out, how do we speed up that cycle as fast as possible? One, you make a plan, you execute to the plan, and at the end of the day, you are you either know you need to make an adjustment or not. Well, these scoreboards is what we need, and at our company, we call them a blue wall. And our blue walls, again, I know a lot of you have seen some really neat technology back here in the exhibition hall, and there's virtual blue walls in case there's a geographic challenge. But if your teams, and I'm talking about functional teams or teams on a manufacturing floor, have a capability of seeing where their performance is in regards to their strategic alignment, and they can link them to throughout the whole organization, we'll know if we're winning or losing the game. I'm actually out of time. I am. So any quick questions, comments, or emotional outbursts? No? All right.